Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our C.A.L webinar. This is focused on how to create rubrics in Blackboard Ultra, and I'm very, very pleased to welcome Dr. Helene Krauthamer. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Helene Krauthamer. I'm professor of English and the English BA program coordinator, and I have a long history with rubrics.
Excellent.
And I'm happy to interrupt anything I say, have anything interrupted. If you have any questions, feel free to just shout it out or put in the chat. I can see the chat while I'm doing this, so things should be running smoothly. And just, feel free to keep your videos on and yourselves unmuted if you like. I'm good with that. In fact, I will be asking questions throughout the presentation, and it would be great if you could respond. So my first question is, have you been using rubrics? Anybody feel like chiming in on your current use of rubrics? You're just like my classes this semester, quiet. But I've been using rubrics way back, when I was a student. It used to frustrate me a great deal when I would get a grade on a paper and it'd just be like an A or a B or a C or whatever it was. And I'm like, why? And sometimes there'd be comments on it, but sometimes there wouldn't be. It was just a flat out grade. And as a professor, I thought, I don't want to do that for my students. I want them to see how I came to that grade of A, B, C, or whatever. It does ultimately come out as an A, B, C, or whatever, but how do you get there? And a rubric is the path to show them how to get there. So while we often think of rubrics as assessment tools, I think we also need to see them as learning tools, as a guide for our students to see what steps they need to take to reach that A-level paper. I'm going to move along with the PowerPoint. I think I can. There we go. So in this session, I hope you will learn the benefits, if you don't already know that, the benefit of using rubrics over holistic grades. And by holistic grade, I mean like an A, B, C, or D, whatever. I hope you will come away with having learned what the elements of a rubric are, which will be called criteria and values. More practically, I'm going to show you how you can create a rubric in Blackboard Ultra, slightly different than the old traditional Blackboard. And I hope we will get to the point of seeing examples of how I've used rubrics, how we're using rubrics at the university level, how we can do a rubric analysis that's actually changed a bit from some of the past ways of doing things, and then just have an all-out discussion if there is time for for an open discussion at the very end. So please hang in here to the end. And I think this is being recorded too. So if you're not with us now, at the end, I'll share my email with you if you ever need to communicate with me again. Any questions so far? Okay, again, feel free to chat or raise your hand or comment, just comment. Okay, so here we go. So why use rubrics? The rubric, I think, has become pretty standard in everything now, primarily because we're all engaged in assessment. There was a time when it was simply, as I said, you get a midterm grade, a final grade, there were exams, there were papers, but they didn't give us that much information. Rubrics are designed so that you're learning something about the test results or the essay results or the paper results. And you can use a rubric for evaluating or assessing really pretty much anything. And I mean anything. If you've been attending the presidential search interviews recently, you might even be thinking, gee, how do we assess this candidate? What are some of the ways we can evaluate and assess? And I'm using the terms assess and evaluate almost equally, even though they're really not equal. Just to give you a little assessment 101 here, when we talk about assessment, we're usually referring to how we can improve what we're doing. And that's assessment. Whereas evaluation is more about passing a judgment over something. So it's, what is that final grade? Will that candidate, which candidate are we going to pick? That's a judgment. That's an actual decision made as a result, probably as a result of your assessments. But the idea of assessment, of course, is continuous improvement, whereas evaluation is, that's your score, that's your grade, that's your promotion, that's, you're hired. Okay, any questions so far? A lot of question marks there. Okay, here we go. But so when you're developing a rubric, you're basically looking at these aspects. So the first question is, what are the criteria? In other words, if you're looking at a presidential candidate, let's use that one, what qualities are you looking for in that presidential candidate? What would they be? Could be a personality, could be qualifications, could be experience, could be, well, I don't know, and this, by the way, is one of the hardest one of the hardest questions to ask when you're developing a rubric. What are the criteria? And I could give you long histories of how we sat around as a group with the general education program to talk about what criteria we're going to use to assess papers, just plain old papers. The writing, how do we assess writing? What are the criteria of a good essay? What are the criteria of a good project? And it's not easy. You cannot do this alone, although I think as an instructor, I have certainly done this alone for my own personal courses. But in the general education program, for example, we've been doing this really as a community of instructors, as well as we bring in Professor Dr. Graham to give us guidance on how to tighten up criteria, is to make sure that criteria aren't merging one with another or overlapping in some way. We don't want that. We want each criteria to be sort of separate and distinct so that you can, when you're measuring one of the criteria, it's not kind of sliding into the next level. And we'll see some examples of that soon. Well, anyway, once you have your criteria in place, then you have to think about what are the range of values for each criteria. So what's the best example? What's the medium example? And what's that worst example that you don't want your students ever to do, but they're doing it? And so there is a range. It could be a numerical range. So for example, in my classes, I like to use just plain old numbers, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. But some people like to use labels: excellent, very good, good, not so good, unsatisfactory. And again, you have to put a lot of thought into what you're calling these values, because again, you're sharing this with students usually. And you're using the numbers, perhaps. You're actually using the values to determine what that final grade is going to be. And again, I'll show you some examples soon. And for it to be really valuable and useful for students, you want to provide descriptions of the values. So that's another area where you can have a label for something, but then flesh it out. How are you going to describe it in words, in actual words that will tell the student in the future what the highest quality is, what it looks like, how it should be. And really, that's like a teaching guide. That part 3 is almost like an instruction manual for the student to see how to prepare a better version of whatever you're talking about. Number 4, how are the values measured? So this is a range often. You're using numbers perhaps, again, or it could be percentages. I'll show you some examples of this. But the final one, how are you going to use it? It's not enough to just have the rubric, but then what are you doing with those results? You're going to see some pretty amazing analyses, but then where do you go with them? What do you do with them? Again, I was saying that, some of this, of course, is you're sharing this with the student, but then if you're doing sort of program assessments, you're, trying to put them all together in some fashion and interpret them to see what it would mean. Well, that's the goal. Anyway, that's what we're trying to do, but these are some of the questions. Any questions yet? Okay, here we go. Okay, so where do I'm just not sure. Why am I not advancing? Okay, so I just put in this little activity just, because I like to use concrete examples with my students of, so if I were doing this as a class session, I would have brought in chocolate for all of you. I don't know if I hope nobody's allergic to chocolate, and I always worry about that when I do this kind of thing with my classes. But let's use this as an exercise, and feel free to use the chat area. Let's talk about criteria. And I said that, as I said earlier, this is one of the most challenging areas to develop when you're talking about, when you're developing a rubric. What will those criteria be? So let's look at chocolate, for example. What do you think are some of the qualities of good chocolate, superior chocolate? Feel free to use the chat. I'm going to just look at the chat and see if anybody's writing anything, or then chime in. Good chocolate.
I think for me, maybe the cocoa content, if it's higher. I like dark chocolate, for example.
Okay, dark chocolate, higher quality of cocoa, higher percentage of cocoa. I'm thinking it goes pretty high, some of them, right?
Yes.
I'm not sure what the highest quantity is.
I've seen 92% before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Richness.
Mm-hmm.
I see there's color, smell, and taste. Yeah. So you see what we're trying to do here. We're kind of taking apart a piece of chocolate and thinking about what it is we desire about it. Oh, yes. And let's not forget delicious.
Delicious.
The taste of it. It has to satisfy a certain part of us. This is not an easy thing, right? It's kind of sometimes you want to say, oh, you know it when you taste it. You just know it. And by the way, I do remember one of my colleagues, when I asked her, how do you know that your students have learned at something in your class? She says, I just get a feeling. Now, so we're trying to move from that sense of feeling to something analytical. And it's hard. It's really hard to separate those criteria. So back when we were, and it wasn't that long ago, it was just a few weeks ago, we were talking about the criteria of a writing sample. What would you say are the criteria for good writing? You could replace that word chocolate with almost anything. What are the qualities of a good president? If we're going to think about, if our brains are on the presidential search right now, what qualities are you looking for? What qualities are you listening for when they're doing their interviews? Again, not easy. And when you develop a rubric, clarity. Thank you, Dr. Shanstrong. And I assume you're referring to writing. Clarity goes a long way for a lot of things. So it's hard. This is a hard one. How many criteria are you going to have? The more criteria you have, I have to say, it depends what you're doing. The more criteria in a rubric, sometimes it becomes really challenging to look at all of these separate qualities. So often you need to merge these criteria into one or two categories. And I'm going to show you some more examples as we go through this. Let's move along to, I don't know why I'm not moving along. Oh, here we go. Found it. Okay, so once you have the criteria in place, what are the values? So by values, we mean like, okay, so say we're saying, this is an easy one, cocoa content. That would be easy because you could go from, well, again, but what do you consider the best cocoa content? Sorry, I'm going to try to talk clearly. What is the best quantity of cocoa in chocolate? And of course, This could be subjective too, right? Not everybody has the same taste. So now you're dealing with a certain level of subjectivity. It's something that's supposed to, we're trying to make things more objective. So this is challenging too. But usually these values range from, the easy ones are sort of excellent, very good, good, not so good, not at all good, or high proficiency when we're talking about the ability to do something. High proficiency, proficiency, medium proficiency, not so proficient, not at all proficient. And these words that you use do make a difference. As I was saying earlier, if you're instructing students, you don't want to be too negative, because you don't want to, use, words with negative connotations, because if a student gets it in that range, in that value, sorry, that could devastate a student. So we want to keep certain words, needs improvement, rather than it's weak. Needs improvement feels like we could all use a little improvement. So there's the question of the values. Any questions about this one? Again, it's not easy. None of these categories are easy, although I'll show you some easy ways of doing it at the end. And now come the descriptions. How do you describe these values? Say we go back to the idea of richness of chocolate. What does that mean? How do you describe what a rich piece of chocolate tastes like? Is it the quantity? I'm trying to think, what are some of the elements of chocolate? Like, is it the quantity? Oh, I know. For example, I'm always looking for something called chocolate liqueur. I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm always looking for that in the label, chocolate liqueur. And so I would say my description of high quality chocolate would be must have chocolate liqueur in it. And there's probably some kind of fat that I don't want in it at all. I'm, kind of in denial that chocolate has fat in it. It's a nutritious food, is it not? Cocoa bean, all that probably has all the nutritional things that we need to survive. But anyway, might be thinking of calorie quant. How much do you eat? I've been told you just need a tiny piece of good quality chocolate to get the sense of satisfaction if it's high quality. So we might have to put that kind of thing into a description. Okay, let's get back to the president. How do you describe things like good personality, ability to talk with others, knowledge of the district, knowledge of faculty, knowledge of students? Each piece should have a complete description. This is, you'll see later, this is where you could get very wordy and or as descriptive as you'd like to be. It doesn't have to be just a one word. We're past the excellent, very good, good. We're into what does it mean to be excellent in this rubric. Any questions on this one? Oh, and I see Dr. Shan Strong wrote in literary eloquence. Okay, I'm going to try to be literarily eloquent myself. You're raising the bar here. Oh, the chocolate bar. Raising the chocolate bar. Okay, and then we come into the measurement part, because this is where the rubrics get into analysis. You want to measure things. I know in my area, I'm an English professor. People don't like to talk about numbers. We're very qualitative people. I'm saying we, meaning me and my English colleagues, but I do have a mathematical background, so I like to see numbers there too. And so you can get into actual numerical ways of measuring just how good that chocolate is, just how good that president might be, just how good the writing. I mean, my own rubrics have only been reserved to write. Well, you'll see writing and discussion boards and PowerPoints themselves. So putting a number on it, really putting some numbers into this. And this is where the analysis comes in. And what do you do with the result? Not my child, not a grandchild, just one of those photos that came out on the internet. Yeah, what are you doing with the results of your rubric? Where is it going? How are you, because if you're just doing it just for the sake of doing it, that's not true assessment. Assessment has to be what they call the continuous loop, meaning that whenever you do an assessment, it's got to have some impact on your future actions. Right now, of course, we're doing our own, it's the end of the semester. Final grades have been submitted, yay, but it's not over yet, because this is the point where really, when we're doing assessments, we should be doing our course assessments now, while it's still fresh in our heads. What worked? What didn't work? Be honest, assessment again is supposed to be not a judgmental kind of thing. It's supposed to be a continuous improvement kind of thing, where you're looking honestly and objectively at what you did in the semester and what really worked, what didn't work, and what are you going to do as a result of your assessments. So, any questions about this? It's called closing the loop. And closing the loop is the most important part of any assessment, because if we're not closing the loop, then we don't have to be doing any of this, okay? And there's always a next time. That's the nice thing about the academic world, or any world, really. There's always a next time. Okay, so I made a list of the steps that I use. I know this is one of those messy, not really messy PowerPoints. I hope you can all see it clearly. Fortunately, we're not in an auditorium where if you're sitting in the back, you're not going to be able to get all the way down to number 13. But if any of you would like just a handout on how to do this, I mean, there are plenty of videos in Blackboard, and I want to thank all of the folks at C.A.L for making all of these videos available. So I'm sure that there's a nice video for how to create a rubric in Blackboard, but I'm one of those people who likes to see a list of steps. And if any of you need that list, copy this or send me an email or something. But it's really pretty intuitive once you do it a few times. So you're basically going to click on your course if you have a course. Click on, and this is, by the way, is different than the way it was in the traditional Blackboard. Some of us still remember the traditional Blackboard. This is the Blackboard Ultra directions. So you click on your course, click on content, click on the plus, and I'm sure by now in Blackboard Ultra, you're looking for that plus sign wherever it happens to be. Click on create an item, and then anywhere you have an item, you could create an assignment, a test, or a discussion. And if you go all the way down, and I'll be able to share, once I'm finished with the PowerPoint, I'll be able to share my screen, show you how we do this in an actual course. Scroll down to additional tools. Took a little while to find that one, but it is there. It's in additional tools. Then you select use grading rubric and you click on add grading rubric. And that's where you can create a new rubric. If you already have a grading rubric already done, you don't even have to go that far. You could just use the grading rubric that you have at step 7. And that way you can reuse rubrics from the past. And it's a very easy thing to do. But let's go back to creating the new rubric. So you're doing it for the first time. So again, these are the questions. You're going to see them over and over again. What are your criteria? And there is a place that says align with goals. And I believe we're still working with this, getting some of the UDC learning goals into Blackboard so that it's more standardized. And it's not like you're not just making up your own goals for each course, each assignment. You're actually using the goals that have already been determined to be the learning goals for either your course or your program or the university. Really, we do have a set of UDC learning goals. If you go around campus, you'll see them on big banners. I think they're still around, and they are in places. So everything should be aligned. And so where it says align with goals, right now, I'm not really sure if you can do anything with that, but for your own course assessments and program assessments, those goals should be aligned with the goals that are already in existence so that we're all on the same page. So I gave you an example of a rubric, the kind of rubric I've been using for writing in my writing classes for quite a while now. Hate to think how many. Anyway, so the criteria that I've used in my own classes for writing an essay, say a typical essay, is called thesis, development, organization, development, usage, and mechanics, which comes out to an acronym that I call the TOTEM acronym, the TOTEM rubric, TODUM, which has become very easy for me to use in essays. And it works for me. And I've shared it with my colleagues, and there is some discussion again about those criteria, and we have some very good discussions about it. I'll give you just a little insight into some of that discussion. The usage, when I say usage, I'm talking about using standard English. And that just gets us off on a whole thing, because what do we mean by standard English? And if you look in the policies in a Blackboard course, it says we're using standard English in our Blackboard courses. And I have a whole course where we talk about what do we mean by standard English. And again, that's just one little term in one criteria, in one rubric, in a whole mess of rubrics. So this gets pretty challenging. Any questions so far? Okay. And then again, back to what are your values? Again, these are the excellent, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and poor are some of those that are just kind of given to us. You could use them, you could change them, but I personally am not always happy with the terms, again, unsatisfactory and poor, because again, I feel like it sends a bad message to students. If they come and they say, oh, that's unsatisfactory, oh, I'm poor, oh, whatever. It's negative, it's not a good sense for them, but I have ways of overcoming that, even though they're numeric numbers that they may not like to get. All right, and now number 11 is that piece that I was telling you before, description. How do you describe these values? What does it mean to be excellent, and so forth? Now, it's a big, you can just write as much as you want in the box. And the students can see as much as you want to say in it. I feel like there's probably a certain number that's probably a good number of words to use in there. Not sure what that is. I feel like that number is getting smaller and smaller with each generation of students. I'm sure that at some point it shouldn't even be words. It should just be a video, but we'll see. I'm still sticking with words. And number 12, the rubric type. In Blackboard, you'll see it's called, there's a percentage range, there's a points range. Those are a lot of options, and I've tried them all in my own rubrics. I'm a fan of just points. I find that when I grade, it's easy for me to grade when I just have boom, 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 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, it could also be a percentage. It could also be a percentage range. It could be a points range. And I've had discussions with my colleagues about that one as well, which is sometimes something is kind of closer to one side of the criteria, the value, and maybe it's in the middle, and maybe, anyway, I find like sometimes when I'm grading, just pick one and commit to it. And of course, in Blackboard, if you didn't save it, it didn't happen. So always make sure you save your rubric once you've created it. All right, I hope this is clear, but I'm sure, again, I'm pretty sure there's some videos in C.A.L that can take you through a video of this. Let me see if I could find my way of moving forward. There it is, found it. So actually, I'm almost ready to share with you some of the rubrics I've done in Blackboard. But when I leave the PowerPoint, I'm going to completely leave the PowerPoint. I'll come back to it a little bit later. So I'm just going to talk through the rest of the PowerPoint, and then we'll leave it to see some examples in Blackboard, and again, give you time for discussion. So the examples that I'm going to show you of my rubrics in Blackboard are, again, these pertain to writing classes, because that's what I teach. And in my writing classes, I have a special rubric for an essay, a different rubric for a discussion board, and a different rubric for a PowerPoint. Now, let me just take us to the next slide because I'm also going to show you. Oh, you'll do this at the end. You're going to rate this PowerPoint at the end on this rubric. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, no, I'm sharing a PowerPoint that, well, okay. I'll see if I can find. Let me stop sharing this PowerPoint. I'm going to stop sharing that. And are there any questions so far? I'm going to take you into Blackboard very soon. But because I wanted to share with you something that is kind of new, which is called the EAC. And I have been experimenting with EAC. And if you'll bear with me, I'll try to do this together with you because it's a new feature of Blackboard that I've only recently been introduced to. So let me see how to get to, I know I can do this. I do this all the time. Hold on, please 1 second. And feel free to chat amongst yourselves while I pull up, whoops. Let's see.
And I'm on mute. No problem, Dr. Krauthamer. You take
Oh, thank you. I'm not quite done. I just need to figure out where my everything is.
No, you're fine. I
Goodness.
just wanted to make known for the participants that we do at Cal, we do have instructional videos that can walk you through creating a rubric, attaching it to your assignments.
Thank you.
And throughout the summer, throughout any of the time, if you're interested in any of that, especially as she goes through EAC, we also partner with that as well. So if you are interested in any of those tools and how they can necessarily be applied into your course, or just be able to aggregate that data needed to walk into those conversations, to advocate for your students or for your programs, please feel free to reach out to us at Cal, and we'll be more than happy to, partner with you and get that taken care of for you.
Okay, I'm just about in one of my courses now, and I'm just about ready to share a screen. Here it is. Can we see my course?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to pull us down to my assignments area. And, whoops. Okay. And I'll take us to this research essay, which was the last thing that they had to do. And here is my rubric. Again, I call it the totem rubric. I'm going to open it up. I'm hoping you can all see it. And I share this with the students. When I attach this rubric to my assignments, and the students can see what it looks like, and I talk them through it. So it's not only an assessment piece for me, but it's a teaching tool for them. And as you see here, the criteria, you notice there are the labels: thesis, organization, development, usage, and mechanics. Here are the values: highly proficient, proficient. Notice I stayed away from bad, not so good, needs improvement, needs much improvement, or no evidence. And I feel like that's safe enough to say. Even though it says 100%, 75%, 50, 25, 0, these are ranges, these are values that you could put in. I have it in points when I'm, notice with the rubric type up here, I can change that to points, percentage range, or points range. Let's see what happens if I hit points. Well, that's no good. We don't want that. And I don't want to mess that up. I'm going to go back to the percentages. But you can put in however you want these values to be. Notice that here's where the description is. And you have to be very careful about how you write your description. It's usually best, what I do is I copy and paste. I copy and paste the highly proficient into the proficient, but I take some pieces away. And notice how it diminishes. It almost looks like a graph itself, how the highly proficient has more words in it than the no evidence, because that's kind of the sense of something is lacking as you go down the scale. So it becomes almost like a visual tool for the students as well. And I do this in each category. Notice again, if you're just looking at the pictures, you could see almost like the difference. Now, here's my category for usage. As I said, this is kind of controversial. What I wrote here, standard written English. What is that? Who knows what that is exactly? I do have a lot of thoughts on that and a lot to say about it, which I do talk to the students about. But this is my one category where I am very quantitative. I do sit there, I count up errors. And I'm so bad about it. I mean, what I do is I do let the students revise their papers. So when they go back in, they could see improvement. But I do count up 1 to 4 errors. They're in the proficient range, not the highly proficient, but the proficient. As soon as they get one little comma error, really mean about, not mean. But anyway, to the point where if there are 15 or more errors, they're just getting a 0 for that. Really, I do that. But it shows them that there's ways to improve. As well as, and for me, I develop, my rubric is very, very focused on things like mechanics, meaning I've even separated what I think many of you will all call grammar in that broad sense, and it's 40% of the grade, because I break up what I call usage errors from mechanical errors. So if they're not putting commas in the right place, it's in the mechanics category. If they're not using verbs properly, it's in the usage error. So you see, my rubrics are very heavy on the grammar side, but I don't keep it limited to that. I'm also looking at what points are they trying to make? That would be the thesis. How well are they organizing their papers? And of course, the development, how much information is in it. Once you have a rubric, hold on, I'm going to close this rubric now. So remember, this is in a student's area for the assignment. You can create a copy, and I'm not going to, hold on, I'm just going to get rid of that. You can create a copy and modify your rubric. If you feel your rubric isn't working the way you like, you can create a copy and modify it. There's so much you could do with it. Let me close off the totem rubric. So that's the essay rubric. I will just, yes, I will. I didn't change. Okay, discard. I don't think I messed up, but meanwhile, it's somewhere. It's somewhere. And let me show you what it looks like. Oh, let me in. So when I'm grading, let me take you to the grading area. Try not to look at anybody's names. I've graded everything. I'm so happy. I've graded everything, I think. Not going to start now. But let's just go to that essay, research essay, and let's look at somebody who, they did wonderfully on their last paper. So I don't think I have to worry about what I'm sharing with you. But hold on. Let me just, whoa, want to see it. Sorry, try not to. Okay, okay, you know what? I know what I have to do. Let me go back to my gradebook. Gradebook. They had a lot of papers. By the way, I just want to show you in the past, and I don't know if any of you have tried this in the past, and I was rather disappointed that I can't do this anymore, but in the past, when I would go into an essay, let's find essay 5 again. I have essays here. Essay 5. There used to be something when, if I were to go into this, I would see rubric analysis, and it's not there anymore, but I'm going to show you where it went. But for a long time, I would do rubric analysis and I would find it right up here, and then it wasn't here anymore, but now I know where it went. But before I do that, before I show you the EAC stuff, let me show you what one of these papers looked like, not that one. Hold on. Okay, view. Alrighty, so when a paper opens up like this and I'm reading the paper, the rubric is right up here. And this is how easy it is to grade a paper. This happened to have been a great paper, last paper. That's why you're seeing 6s. As I said, I give points for it all. Let's see the descriptions. Wait a second. There it is. So the descriptions show up as I'm reading the paper side by side with the rubric. If I wanted to grade very, very quickly, this works for like mass gradings. I could just, plop in the number. You see the range has changed. I'm sorry, the values have changed because sometimes I'm using 4 points, sometimes I'm using 3 points, but now everything became automatically adjusted to the points, but it's still 20% of the total grade. So a lot of the math that I used to have to do on my own, Blackboard's already doing it for me. And each one is there. And the best part, again, is when the students see their grade on the paper. If I were to show you some of the earlier papers, you'd see not all high 6s, but, needs improvement, clearly stated, but does not demonstrate critical thinking. So that means that when the student would go back in to revise the essay, the student would demonstrate critical thinking in order to get that category. I was very pleased as I was doing this to realize that, by the end, they were getting 6s, meaning no errors, but, that may be due to ChatGPT and Grammarly, I don't know. Something's happening, but I'm not complaining. Anyway, so there's the that rubric for you. Let me find a discussion board rubric as well. I don't necessarily have to share with you all these rubrics, but you could create a rubric at any time for anything. This is what's so beautiful about it. And I have different rubrics. Let me find a discussion board. Okay, so the peer review, I have my students do peer review so that they're all, hold on a second. They peer review these essays. So let's view this. And that little box here shows you there's a rubric associated with it. Hope you can see it. And this is a different rubric. I'll show you some of the descriptions of them. Involvement. This one's kind of quantitative. I want to see 3 responses besides their own. So that's kind of an easy one. Promptness. I want them to be doing this, not at the last minute. You'll see in my analysis, not a big category. Promptness was not one of the good things this semester. Well before the deadline, that's not been happening. After the deadline, I'm a little forgiving about that. I let them do things after the deadline. So just to give them the points. But here's relevance and expression, so that in the discussion board, they're not just saying, great job. They're saying they should be helpful, thoughtful, constructive. Again, here are some of the values. And I've a little more generous in the usage and mechanics category, although it does count in discussion boards, but I've combined them so they're 25% of the grade, not 40%. So it's not everywhere. Now, this particular class, I did not have them do PowerPoint, so I cannot show you that. But I want to be mindful of the time. But actually, yeah, I think I will show you a PowerPoint rubric because I follow a whole different way of doing it. And this is in my Frontier Capstone class. Amazing class. They did amazing things in this class. This is the general education one. And I have a PowerPoint. Here it is. The team project presentations, which as a team, they had to do it. So each team did their own PowerPoint presentation. You won't see the actual presentation here. This is just the PowerPoint, but my rubric for this one is very different than the ones you've just seen. But again, here we go. Now, what's different about this, notice range of achievement. That's all. On a scale of 100, what range would you put in? So it's almost like I broke it down into content. I'll show the descriptions too. Range of achievement. The presentation fully states the problem it is addressing, fully describes the partner organization, fully presents the project details. The format. The presentation has clear and readable slides, is organized logically, has an adequate number of slides. By the way, you'll notice there's a place for putting in comments on the rubric. In this one, what I found was the headings for the 4 slides overlap the text. So that was my comment that I was able to put in. And that little purple box shows that there's a feedback, there's some comments here. Usage and mechanics, I always like to include that in everything. Apparently, this particular PowerPoint had some errors there. And use of sources. This one, I wanted to see that they were citing sources accurately and used appropriately and from a variety. But again, all this one is putting it into a range of 100. You don't see all of the categories across the values. It's just on a scale of 1 to 100, how would I rate it holistically? So that's just slightly different. I'm trying to remember my motivation. So now you've seen all of those. Okay, so as I said, I was going crazy, like, okay, where's my rubric analysis? It's not there. But fortunately, since we did our general education assessment day the other day, last Friday or 2 weeks ago, we were kind of informed about the new thing called EAC. So here's how we do EAC, and I do have a kind of sheet if you want, but there are videos in the Calc team that could show you how to do this too. Tools. Notice it's in the institution page tools, not in the course tools, because that's where it used to be, but now it's under tools. EAC visual data. EAC, what does that stand for? It stands for Educational Assessment Corporation, but it's a good thing. So we're clicking into EAC visual data. There it is, Educational Assessments Corporation. And by the way, I do give one test, but I mostly use the rubrics, and this is about rubrics, but you can do a test analysis, like an item analysis if you're doing a test. But since we're talking about rubrics, let me turn to the rubrics. So the first thing you want to do is click on rubrics. The second thing that you want to do, which evaded me for a while because I'm looking like, I have so many rubrics. Why aren't they listed here? Where are they? I clicked everywhere. But then I watched one of those videos. And so you need to go into the date area. You see it? It's up here. Again, a little thing, but you do want to pick a date. The date goes back in time. We go back in time. I don't know. I think the magic date for me was August 2022, because I think that's when I've been using rubrics forever, but I'll just pick August 1st, 2022 and say, whoops, I lost it. Hold on, got to get back to it. Notice, watch as I make all of my mistakes, and you could make them too. Okay, so we're going to pick that. It's there. We hit go. And look what happens. All of my rubrics magically. Look how many of them I have. There's the totem rubric of which I was just speaking. There's the common rubric. Actually, that's the one that we were kind of working on as a group to try to determine what some of those values should be, criteria, all of that. There's a discussion board rubric, which each peer review that I do has a separate discussion board rubric. The totem rubric is everywhere because I use that all the time. I created some very vague kind of essay rubric, which is not the same, but again, playing around with it. Here's the project presentation rubric, which I was just showing you. Anyway, and it goes on and on. I have a lot of rubrics up here, and for each one, there is an analysis feature. So let's see what something like that looks like. I'm just scrolling down, seeing how many there are. There's a lot of data in here. And the question is, what do we do with that all? What can we possibly do? Well, let's take a look. So so I'm just going to pick one. And oh, you see, look at this. It's highlighted every time I've used a totem rubric. Let's see where it goes. Let's see where you're coming on an exploration with me. Hold on a second. That's Courses include, okay, so it's everywhere. Okay, so now on the side here, on this column, you see a row analysis, a student rows, details, goal summary, student goals, student landscape. There's a lot of stuff here. Let's go into the row analysis, because this is where it kind of gets interesting. Because let's just take a look at this first one. Again, there's lots to look at here. And really, frankly, I could spend the whole summer going through this, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with these results. There's a lot of stuff. But what I can see, if we're using this as an example, and this I think is just for that essay number 5, the research essay, the last one. What I'm seeing is, look, the thesis, they're getting 99%, they've got it. Organization, pretty good, high 98%. Development also 96%. Where are they still coming down in? Despite the use, perhaps, I don't think they're really using ChatGPT, but Grammarly, all that, maybe it's on its way. Obviously, the areas of usage and mechanics are the target areas. Those are the places that it's showing me immediately that here's an area that I want them to improve on, I want to work on, because this is the end of the semester. This, I think, is the essay number 5, essay of the semester. Last one of the semester. And if you don't like looking at it that way, you could look at it this way with it kind of, it depends what kind of learning style you have in terms of how you understand things. This is what each of these colors will give you. I'm a numbers person, so I like this way best. And, by the way, you can download this stuff. I should point out that if you're doing like your own evaluations and you want to write a report and put it wherever you want to put it, into your program report, program reviews, or into your own personal evaluation portfolios, of course, that's history now. But you can download all of these as a Word, full, whatever. So they're all downloadable. Anyway, let me get back to, hold on, I think I can do that. Well, anyway, any questions so far? I feel like I've just been chatting away, talking and taking a tour of EAC. It's an immense tool, and I'm really excited about being able to, take these results. And what do we do with it now? What do I do with this? Okay, so this year, I was one of the first years I kind of did have a grammar book for them, but it was virtual, it was online. I didn't give them exercises. I didn't give them assignments that were specifically about using commas, for example. I had lessons of my own, but I don't do grammar lessons. I just revise, give them their papers, have them revise their papers, all of that. So, I'm always one of those people who is very on top of grammar usage, but I'm always rethinking, how am I teaching it? How am I enforcing it? What am I doing? And I am kind of pleased. What I could do, and I'm not going to dare try showing this to you now, I can do a comparison of like, this wasn't what it looked like in the first essay. So one of the things I probably should be happy about is how thesis organization and development probably were not in the 90s at the beginning. I'm sure I know they weren't, but I would have now evidence to say they weren't in the 90s at the beginning. Look at how they've improved. And even though I'm looking at the 0.75 and the 0.64 for usage of mechanics and thinking, oh no, they're still not at perfect levels. I think if I were to look at the earlier levels, the earlier assignments, they would be way lower because anyway. And keep in mind, this isn't just for, I'm grading my own papers now, I'm assessing those papers. If you have other people grading your stuff, assessing your stuff, that's a better way of knowing, getting a sense. And that, by the way, is what we're doing for the general education program. We're not just looking at individual courses, we're looking at the courses on a whole, and we have those common assessments that are using a common rubric that can be analyzed using EAC. So that we're looking at pretty much all the courses in the general education program following this rubric. And I see Julian nodding his head because I think we owe him a lot of credit for setting up that common assessment the way he did. I see I'm in the last 5 minutes, so questions, not a whole lot of time for discussion, but I'm going to stop sharing. I hope that was helpful. Questions, comments, anything?
This was good. I've never used that EAC.
Because it has not been available to us until this semester.
Oh, okay.
It is really new. It is, like I said, I was looking in the gradebook area trying to find rubric analysis, wasn't there. And I kept saying, where is it? It was such a useful tool. But that EAC is there, and you see all the data. I'm sure it's there for you if you've used rubrics before. I think it's one of those tools we need to just kind of, dive in, see what's there, see how we're going to use it. And a very powerful tool. So, yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I don't have, but I thought it's just very, very well done. And this can be used when developing a rubric for writing an effective resume or writing an effective cover letter and etc. But this is just excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, as I tried to give you the example, if you can do a rubric for chocolate, you should be able to do a rubric. Oh, let me go back to my PowerPoint. I just want to just turn to my PowerPoint one more time, because as I said, I have this. Hold on.
You see, we already have a basic rubric in place for the cover letter.
You can create a very you can create a very basic rubric. Like I did this rubric, I think you could see it, for this presentation, for example, rate this presentation. And I did it in really like 20 minutes. Really, was it informative? Was it organized? Was it visually interesting? And again, I'm using highly proficient, somewhat proficient, not at all proficient. Again, I made this really quickly. It's a matrix, if you're familiar with the term like matrix. You're doing a matrix here. And I think, again, it's a good tool for students to see, so it's not just you got an A, a B, a C. Here are the areas where you need to follow up on. And I always, by the way, I always give students opportunities to revise. I'm strict, but I let them revise as many times. I hate to say it, I use unlimited submissions multiple submissions when I create these assignments, and it's fine. They do improve this way. So yeah, this is just, I hope you're all, people should just be using rubrics now, not the holistic grades that we used to use. You don't get a whole lot of information, but using a rubric, but putting a lot of thought. We're still reworking the rubrics we've been using over time. So that's another part of the assessment process, rethinking your rubrics and revising them so that they can be what you want them to be. So my final slide is, I'm hoping to be off for the summer. I don't know if I will, but the C.A.L team is amazing. I mean, there's so many videos out there. The EAC thing has, I don't know how many, but there's, they're very accurate about how to do this and where to find this. As I said, when I first looked at EAC, I'm going, where is everything? And but the person said, change the date. And I changed the date and all those things popped up. So yeah, so watch the videos from EAC. The EAC thing, again, is in that tools area on the side of in the institution page. And just change the date. That's my big takeaway from the video. Change that date, and then things should pop up. Again, back to, there's also a test analysis in there that I haven't yet really needed to use, but it's there if you wanted to do item analysis on exams. So, explore that one too if you're using tests. All righty, 1 more minute to go. Any final comments, questions? Well, make up your own rubric for evaluating the presidential candidates. I mean, so far what I'm seeing is pretty exciting. And hopefully we'll get somebody good. So thanks for watching. And I think this is recorded too, but if you're watching the recording, anybody's watching the recording, even though I'm saying I'm off for the summer, I am pretty much obsessed. I'm really connected with my email. So you could always email me if you wanted, for example, that I don't think you need this anymore, but if you did, well, not that one, the list of steps for creating a rubric. And I made I made another list for how to get into the EAC stuff, but that really has way fewer steps than 13. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Okay, well, thanks so much. Take care.
Thank
Be
you,
well.
Dr.
Enjoy your
Dr. Krauthamer.
summers.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
presenting an
That's a
excellent
fake ice
session.
cream cone, by the way.
Thank you for presenting an excellent session. Very,
Okay.
very original and creative. And it'll be
Oh, so you want to
used.
rate this PowerPoint?
Thank you. Excellent.
Okay, you can rate the PowerPoint. Okay, take care of yourselves. Be well.
you.
Have a good summer. Maybe. Yeah, have a great
Okay,
summer.
thank you.
Bye-bye. 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 Thank you.